Hello, as promised, I'm going to go over another of the programming challenge problems from chapter 2. If you'd like to follow along, it's question number 10. The question is, a car holds 15 gallons of gasoline and can travel 375 miles before refueling. Write a program that calculates the number of miles per gallon the car gets. Display the result on the screen. And then we have a formula for calculating the MPG. Before we get started, I want to point out that we will be assuming that you have read chapter 2. If you haven't, please go back and do that. There's a reason we're spending 2 weeks on chapter 2, and that's because it's a very foundational chapter, and it is imperative that you read. Okay, so let's get started. First thing we like to do is go ahead and get rid of this boilerplate. We don't need to see out hello world. Alright, so let's now create variables to hold the gallons of gasoline the car can hold and the number of miles it can travel before refueling. And then let's also create a variable that calculates our MPG. Now in the real world, you'd probably use numbers with decimal places, but you will learn in later chapters that Cout has a little bit of difficulty out of the box dealing with decimal numbers, otherwise known as real numbers. So for this example, we're just going to be talking about integers. So let's go ahead and create an integer for the gallons, and per the text above, that value is 15. And never forget your semicolons. Let's do another one for miles. And then again, just use the text above to know what we're going to set it to. Let's create a third one to hold the MPG. All right, and as the formula points out, it's the miles driven divided by the gallons of gas used. All right, now we've done some code. There's no output, but just to be sure we don't have a compilation error, let's go ahead and hit run, just to see if we've forgotten any semicolons or anything. It's always easier to debug issues that come up when you have less code. So if you wait till the very end after you're all done typing and coding everything before you do your first compilation, you could easily have issues tracking down where your problems are. And it never hurts to just hit run and compile as often as you'd like. Now, there's no output. We also don't have any errors. So let's go ahead and continue. As you should know from the chapter, to output things to the screen, we use the Cout object. And the Cout object is made available to us by including IOStream and then using the namespace that it's in, std. So Cout, let's give some text to the user so we're not just printing out a number to the screen with no context. Let's say your MPG is, and then let's output MPG. So we'll go ahead and hit run. And then you can see that it's calculated our MPG as 25. Now, let's go ahead and fiddle around with a little bit. Let's say that this gets twice as many miles. Now, our miles per gallon is 50. Now, let's see what happens if we use a number that should give us a decimal. So the first thing we're going to do here is let's figure out something that, well, let's use like 733. That should no way give us a whole number. Now because we're forcing these into integers, and Cout by default only handles integers, or will automatically convert things to integers, we hit run, and then we'll see a whole number. Now that is not actually the case, but hopefully you can see what Cout is doing. Now, if we were to store both of these, or all of these, as doubles, and let's create some fractional amounts. Now when we hit run, you might think that you're going to get a nice clean number with no decimals, or with only 2 decimals, because typically we don't go this far. But out of the box, cout will use precision of 4. Let's see what happens if we keep the first 2 as doubles and change MPG to integer. So the result we get is a whole number. So what happened there? Even though this division gave us a decimal, when we said that MPG is going to be an integer, what we're doing is we're forcing it to be cast as an integer, meaning it's going to take the decimal and it's going to change it to a whole number. Now, did it round up or down? Let's find out. Let's put the double back in there and we'll run it again. Now in this case, it's 3-1, so it looks like it rounded down. So let's see if we can get it to round up, if that's even possible. Let's make this 2. And let's see what we get. Okay, that actually had the opposite effect, so let's instead increase it to 8. Okay, so now you would think it would round up. We can actually, just to emphasize this point even more, let's see if we can get it a little closer to 48 without actually hitting 48. Okay, 47.7. So let's change this to an integer. Now you might think that it'll round up, and let's see what happens. And in this case, it rounded down. So not expected, but that's just the way that C++ works when it's doing rounding. You have to specifically tell it if you want it to round up or down, or if you want to do specific rounding, I should say. Otherwise, it's going to round down for calculating whole numbers. All right, if you have any questions on this assignment, go ahead and post a discussion, or as always, you can start a conversation with me on Canvas. Thank you.